Hello, I'm William Gallagher and this is 58 Keys Writing Workshop set of videos where I tell you, I happen to write something and then you, please disagree with me in the comments, because otherwise what's the point? It's just me gabbing away at you, and this is supposed to be you and me, writer to writer, having a chat about a topic, and this time the topic is writing genre fiction. Now, it's not like you don't know what genre fiction is. You read crime novels, I'm sure. We all must do it at some point. Some crime novels are great, but there's a loading, there's a baggage that comes with genre fiction. And one of it for us as writers concerns kind of the packaging of things. Best way, I think, is a long time ago I was working with a writer and she just finished her first manuscript. I didn't have a publisher deal, didn't have a contract or an editor yet. I don't think she had an agent, can't remember now. But basically she was at the stage of it was almost like a blind cold call of trying to get the material out to her. And the problem, she said to me, was she didn't know how to describe it to anybody, because it was kind of like a comedy but also a romance. And I actually think, you know, for once I actually thought I knew the right answer, and I was a bit smug about this because I told her definitively, so like a man, it's a comedy novel when you're sending it to a comedy publisher. It's a romance when you're sending it to a romance publisher. And actually I think that's what she did. But because this is it, isn't it? What we write gets packaged and sent out to people, and we have to do some of that because we are trying to persuade publishers to take it. We've got to position it, we've got to help them in some way, and then after that they put it out somewhere to people. I'm suddenly reminded of a story of a horror novelist. I know I haven't asked him if I can mention this, so I won't say his name, but he got a really, really successful, I mean, terrifying horror. I read his books because he's a friend, but God, it's scary. Okay, but his first one, just gigantic success. He was telling me during the process that at some point the publishers came back to him with what the cover was going to be, and he was really unhappy about it. He said, this is a horror novel. That doesn't look like a horror cover. And the publisher said, no, it doesn't. Horror fans are going to get this anyway. That cover is to attract everyone else. They're really, I mean, he agreed with them. I didn't see any different covers. I'm sure they were right. Publishers are good at this, better than I think we can be. So give them what you can, but you need to concentrate on the words themselves. That's the bit you are not only good at, not only best at, you're the only one doing the actual words. So you focus on that. That business of, is it comedy, is it romance, speaks though to an issue of, well, what is it then, really? The short version is you can put comedy in front of anything. Comedy crime, comedy thrillers, things like that. Actually, comedy crime reminds me, it's another writer I know who I haven't asked, so I won't mention the name. When I first knew him, I think he was 3 or 4 books into a series of comedy crime novels, and it was one of those where I bought it because I knew him, I was working with them, and they're really good. I was having a great time with them. And then, is it book 5, book 6, somewhere around there, he was talking to me about, I think he was really concerned about in it, which was this. He had started out doing crime novels explicitly because genre fiction gives you a structure for the story. I mean, in crime, there's a crime. There's a detective or an equivalent of a detective in some way. And then at the end, there's a resolution. The world is put to rights. There's your structure straight there. That's what appealed to him. That set him off in it. And because he was a naturally funny writer, he was writing comedy things, and it was working very, very well. But his comedy character in this 5th or 6th book, as part of the story, comes across another book. Uncovers a book, I think it's a book, text of some description of some length, and the character reads this, but that text is not funny at all. Doesn't try to be, there's not a single gag in it, and it's quite long. I want to say it's a chapter, it might have been just half a chapter, but comedy, 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 serious bit, comedy, comedy, comedy. And the writer was really worried about that middle bit, and I think he said his publisher was as well, I can't remember. The tone change was so different. This is a case where I didn't have any manly advice. I could just appreciate the problem. And the book comes out, and the book is really well received, and it is excellent, mostly because of that section. That section, no laughs, was incredibly well written. I think it was the best thing he'd written up to that point. And I think he thought that too, because he must have done more comedy after it, but he's better known now for completely serious crime novels. It was like, that was the turn. I mean, I say completely serious, it's still witty, still clever and all that stuff, but it's not there for the laughs, it's serious stuff. And I felt like he grew there. I mean, that sounds a bit up myself, really. The writer grew from nothing, but there he was, starting out using crime as a crutch, and then he found his voice for the way he wanted to tell stories, and then he just off and doing it. I mean, he's still doing crime, he's still big in the crime world for it, but he has changed, and his books have changed, and it's brilliant. Okay, so we change, we try things, we stretch, we push at the barriers, we do a serious bit in the middle, we make it a romance that's funny, we make it a comedy that's romantic. We do what we do, but there are still conditions in it. It's not like there are rules in genre fiction, right? But you know there are expectations. I just said with a crime, it's a little difficult to have a crime novel without a crime, although Alan Plater, I think of this quite a lot, so I may have mentioned it before, sorry. Alan Plater used to write for a cop show called Z-Cars in the UK in the 1960s or so, and he very famously wrote an episode called A Quiet Night. The episode is long gone, it was wiped in the 60s, but the script still exists. The script was published, and it was so fine. A Quiet Night is set in the police station and the surrounding environs, and you can make a strong case that nothing happens. I mean, the billing for it practically says nothing happens. And it's true, there's no crime, there's no bank robbery, nothing at all. But by the end of it, a character dies and you feel the weight. You feel the weight, but you also feel it on the shoulders of the police officers who maybe could have done something that would have made it end differently. Maybe. You know that's going to stay with them. It wasn't a crime. Nobody did anything wrong. It's still the reality on it in that crime setting. Fantastic piece of work. So you can have a crime story that doesn't have crime. I don't think in a romance you can get away from the fact that you're going to need two characters. Really, you're thinking of Her, the film, the AI film where some geezer falls in love with Alexa or Siri or some copyright-free equivalent of that. But I would still argue that as well as the guy who should probably get out more, there was also Siri, Alexa, or whatever the name is. That was a character for it. I mean, it was voiced, wasn't it? Scarlett Johansson voiced it. You need two characters for a story like that. Even in romance, so with crime, the crime at the start, finish at the end, romance has a structure as well in that typically people meet. In film, it's called the meet cute. You have that moment when they meet and then things progress, things happen, things go wrong, it's all awful, it's all great, and by the end, happily ever after. That's a typical format for it. And I think the fact that you can have a typical format is one of the reasons that genre fiction gets derided for it. I mean, is romance the most derided type of genre fiction? I don't think it should be at all. I think romance is incredibly difficult to do. You and I could talk for a good hour and a half over a drink somewhere about how close romance and thrillers are. I think they are just so near to identical and equally difficult to sustain, equally difficult to carry people through. I admire romance writers, but it does have this presumption that because it's going to be happy at the end, that it's easy, and then you get people trying to write it because, well, it's easy, isn't it? And romance sells like nobody's business. I'm going to write some of that. Yeah, no. Only write the type of genre that you actually enjoy. You can't fake this stuff. I will never be able to write a horror story. Apparently some of my Doctor Who's have come close, but that was a surprise to me. I like romance. I try to write romance. It's not getting there yet, but I appreciate it. And I think if you come in cynically to write a genre thing, then it shows. You're a writer, you know this. I will say this 1,000 times. Writing is not just about the words you use, it's the words you don't use, it's what ideas you put in. People know when you're faking it, really. I mean, it sounds idealistic to only write the things you like, when clearly zombie fictions, for example, will never die. And I've just realised what I said there, but I will never write a zombie fiction novel because I'll never read one. It's not going to work there. And if I tried, can you imagine how bad it would be? Yeah, you probably can, actually. I'll tell you one thing. One of the expectations, I think, is with genre fiction that you stay in the genre. I mean, I talked about comedy romance and comedy crime and things, but really that's a genre with comedy in a bit. It hasn't changed from being a crime into a romance, or it hasn't changed from crime into a Western, for example. There are thinner lines. Science fiction into fantasy is interesting. I will read science fiction. I tend not to read fantasy. That's me more than the writer, though, making that distinction. Generally speaking, that was nearly a pun. Crossing the streams isn't good. There are examples. This is in the film From Dusk Till Dawn. I can't remember what it starts out as, but I think it becomes horror. Never seen it. From memory, mixed reactions over it. But I'll tell you what, forget writing for publication. Just think of you and me as writers practicing our craft. A thing I've done in writing workshops has done really well for me, and I've so enjoyed it, is that I've talked about genre with people. We've worked on it, we've talked about what we like, what we don't, the expectations. You know, you're writing a Western, what are the things that have to be in it? You know, a horse, maybe. You do all of that, and then you set people off writing a story, and you set up some parameters. I don't know what it is, some limited number of characters. You do something that they're not starting dead from scratch, but you also, the key thing of all that is you specify that whatever you're doing, whatever the characters are, and whichever genre you pick, they're going on a journey. And then you set them writing, but you explicitly say the rule is you must stop the story halfway through the journey. Wherever they're going, whatever they're doing, you don't let them get there, you stop it in some way. And then you talk about that writing and the focus that might have given you, all sorts of things you can do to kind of slightly disguise where you're really going with this, which is then, right, now continue the story in any other totally different genre. And when I do a workshop, I obviously do the work as well. I mean, what else am I going to do? Just sit there watching everything. Do you know how boring it is to watch other people? Right, okay. So I'll do it as well. And I seem to remember there was one time, I probably would have started with romance and I changed it to horror halfway through because that would be very difficult for me and I wanted to see what I could do. And in the end, the story was rubbish. Of course it was. But what interested me as a writer was I didn't change a word of the first half, but what I did in the second made you see the first half in a different way. You remembered things and suddenly became, just small touches that you could change in the story by doing that. Now that is brute force example, way down the romance line, followed by way down the horror line, or as far as I could go for this stuff. But that change, I think, helped me as a writer. So great. Break genre as a writing exercise. And I'm sure you must be able to do it as a full novel. I wouldn't, I think. So you do you. And in fact, could you first, before you do you, could you say something about it in the comments, please, so we can have a chat about this. Do you deride genre fiction, in which case you're off my Christmas list, but tell me why and we could have a heated debate there. Do you have an issue with when writers are known for, say, crime writing and then can't get out of it? That bothers me a little bit. I've asked writers about that and everyone I've spoken to has been actually very happy in the genre because it's a genre they love, but you might feel differently. And like I say, the whole point of these videos is that we have this conversation. It's what the comments were invented for, really. And I'm just going to sit here until I might get a drink. Yeah, it's really hot in here today. I might get a cold drink, but then I'll be back waiting for your comments below. Until then, That's it for this edition of the 58 Keys Writing Workshop set of videos. Thank you very much for watching. Now take care of yourself. Write more. I know we talk a lot here, but the whole point is that we will then write more, both of us, and I'll see you soon.